Hi, I'm Vicky. I'm a reporter. And like you, I'm concerned about the world that we're leaving for our children and grandchildren. Like you, I know that society should reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. But it's not happening, is it? And certainly not from buildings, which should be the easiest. At least easier compared to industry, farming, and transportation. So what can we do about it? Well, the research graduate students here at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario are working on this very question. So let's go inside, take a peek, and let's see what they're up to. Hi, nice to see you.
McMaster.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here. Professor James Cotton heads up the McMaster Institute for Energy Studies, which was contracted to research heat demand and heat sources and thermal energy storage by the Boltzmann Institute as part of the Two Pathway Studies, which intends to shed light on the ramifications and, in particular, costs to consumers of pursuing zero emissions from buildings down two pathways. The first pathway being substitution of gas entirely by electricity, while the second pathway of substitution of gas by thermal networks in towns and cities. Part of the funding came from Environment Canada's Climate Action and Awareness Fund.
First of all, welcome to my lab. This is our Energy Management Center in the Hatch Center for Experiential Learning.
So all of these tubes that I see around us, what are they used for?
The system is a replica of what you would have in a larger scale energy management center for a city. And what we do here is we have energy that would normally be lost to the environment. For example, from the CHP beside me right here, this produces electricity, and we also capture the waste heat, and we use that to heat the building or store it in the summertime. In what you have right behind you is our long-term seasonal storage. We could store that all summer long and then take that energy out in the wintertime to heat the building. So right now in Ontario, most of our homes, 74%, are heated by natural gas. We have to transition away from that gas. So how do we do that? Well, there's the obvious that we can electrify it. Just like we electrify cars, we can electrify our heating systems. That's difficult because there's a lot more energy needed to heat our homes, especially on the coldest days of the year. So we would need a lot of infrastructure. So what other opportunities are there? And they are things like the sun. Other things that are not as quite as obvious is waste heat from industry, like the steel industry in Hamilton, or from data centers. We can harvest that heat, and even we can harvest heat from nuclear reactors because they have heat that they need to make the system work that is essentially dumped into the environment. Why don't we capture that, use that for our buildings? So what we did with the Boltzmann study is try to find out how much energy do we need. That was one of the key areas of what we were focusing on. How much energy is needed for heating? And if we did it all with electricity, it would add 5 times the amount of required capacity, the 5 times nuclear power plants, 5 times Niagara Falls, which doesn't exist. We have 20 students working on this in McMaster University, and their focus is on all different aspects. So my job is to supervise and oversee the students to make sure they stay on path, and give them encouragement, and to make sure that the results are correct.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well. I'm Vicky.
Vicky, nice to meet you. I'm Mike. Welcome to FVB Energy.
Thank you.
Why don't we come? We'll sit down over here.
What is FVB Energy?
We are a Swedish-based district energy consulting firm, and we do district energy projects from start to finish, all different shapes and forms.
Got it.
My team here in Toronto focuses a lot on the Canadian district energy market, which includes projects from coast to coast, the East Coast, all the way out to the West Coast, even remote Indigenous communities in Northern Canada.
So I've been leading the analysis on the financial side for the district energy system, which includes also looking at the low carbon technologies that we could possibly implement within the system. So part of our study is going through a variety of different low carbon technologies and screening them based on local energy sources and unique opportunities in each town. Mm-hmm. And I think that compared to some options that are just cookie cutter across the board, where you can only look at individual building systems, I think district energy has a lot of potential to reduce the long-term costs for the average taxpayer.
My name is Veronica, and I work as an environmental analyst at FVB. Before joining FVB, I worked at Sundsvall Energi, which is a municipal energy utility located in the city of Sundsvall, about 4 hours drive north of Stockholm.
Could you just tell us about what your involvement with the project is?
Yes, I've been supporting the project initially by identifying Anywhere, which is the name of the illustrative community that we have based our study on. I've also been able to utilize my Swedish experience in the project by providing data and examples of different types of technologies that may not be as common in North America yet, but is more progressed in Europe.
So Anywhere, where is it? Like, is it a place, a town?
It is a fictive town located somewhere, anywhere in Ontario. It was important to us to use a community that many of the towns in Ontario can relate to without using an actual place as a reference. So we decided to look at towns in Ontario and see what parts of these towns are common in most of them. And we call these little areas blocks in our report. And we combined this block to the size and to the layout that we wanted to use for our study. And yeah, that is basically how we put the illustrative community together.
So here at FVB Energy, as a consultant engineer, what is your role within it?
For this project, I was a senior project manager, coordinating the various skills of our team to work with the Boltzmann Institute and coordinate feedback from Boltzmann with our team.
District heating is a big step forward, but it's not the complete solution. Yet there are people that are doing it, and they're located not too far from here. We're going to hop into our cars and drive down Highway 7 to visit Markham District Energy. We're going to visit one of the fastest growing district energy systems in Canada.
I'm Bruce Ander. I'm President and CEO of Markham District Energy. We're an energy utility owned by the City of Markham, and we're in our 25th year of operations here in Markham. And so what we do is provide thermal energy, heating and cooling energy to heat and cool all the buildings in the center, which are up to 15 million square feet, including residential condos and schools and community centers, data centers, all sorts of types of customers.
And so is this district energy?
This is known as district energy. In other parts of the world, you've heard terms like thermal grids, community energy, but it's basically a centralized way of providing energy to buildings, as opposed to each individual building having their own boilers or chiller plant on the roof, providing their own thermal energy to heat and cool the buildings. The great benefit of the district system feeding a community is we can do things at a scale that an individual building simply would not do or could not do. And the most important part of that is, and we're in the process of doing that, we can start to decarbonize and change fuels. So as opposed to just having natural gas boilers, now what we are doing is changing fuels. So as opposed to having natural gas as our primary fuel for heating and power, we're now recovering energy from a large sewer main. We're in the construction right now of the world's largest wastewater energy recovery project. And when the plant is operational with heat pump technology, we'll be taking that energy, that wastewater, and elevating it and heating it back to the community. So that's one thing we're doing. We're also producing heat with a small biomass boiler. We have a heat recovery heat pump project. So we also have a cooling system in Markham Center. So all buildings need a lot of cooling, and data centers throw off a lot of heat, and they need cooling year round. We're recovering that heat as opposed to just wasting it, which is becoming a big deal in our world as artificial intelligence and these data center loads are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Recovering that heat is so important. We take that heat, again, elevate it with heat pump technologies and send it back to the buildings.
Speaking of scale, do you see district energy as a way that can power, let's say, entire Ontario?
We're 30 years behind Europe and Scandinavia. To say all of Canada, we're nowhere close to that, but we are urbanizing. in North America. People are moving to cities. And so as they're moving to cities, there's your opportunity. As you see these urban centers developing around rapid transit, especially in Ontario and the Greater Toronto area, as you're creating these urban centers, that's the time to do a district system.
Well, I'm kind of the scientist in the group, and so I did a lot of the research on how this is being done elsewhere, and I did gather a lot of data, and I've done a lot of computer modeling in order to see, how will these two different pathways proceed, not just for a few buildings, but for the whole society.
In layman's term, what was the most important findings of this study?
The scaling up is hard. All right. So you can change your heating system for one building or a small number of buildings. You can say, okay, I'm going to electrify my building. And generally you just go to the power company and say, okay, I need more power, and they say, fine. The problem is that if millions of people start doing that, then the power company's going to say, hold on, we don't have that much power.
It's important to know that it's much cheaper to produce heat than it is to produce electricity. Electricity is manufactured. And heat is actually available all over the place because we throw a lot of it away, even in our sewer systems. Now, it requires equipment, so it's not free to capture waste heat. But typically, it's cheaper to take existing heat or make heat for heating purposes rather than to manufacture electricity and then use the electricity to make heat.
Yeah.
Although a lot of people have been convinced that electrifying everything is wonderful, it's actually the expensive way to do business if what you need is not electricity, but it's heat.
Yes, especially in Canada where it gets cold.
In Canada, we use twice as much energy for heat than we do for electricity. So that gives you a rough idea of how much extra electricity generation we're going to need if we electrify everything.
Yeah. So how much would it cost if we had electrified everything and during the winter peak?
That's what the two pathway studies is about, and my contribution to it was to put the information on how much energy we need into the electrical grid model and see, okay, how much generation do we need? Yeah. And since we're only using it in the wintertime, how much would we have to pay for our electricity to pay for those plants that only run in the wintertime? Yeah. And so the model predicts that the average capacity factor of the electrical grid will drop by half. Now, when you drop the capacity factor of how people use that equipment in half, you double the electricity rates to collect enough money over the year to pay for that equipment. In addition, if you're using air source heat pumps, you need electricity to run them.
Right.
It's not just a blower moving the air through the house. You actually need a compressor. And so you use more electricity to use a heat pump to make heat. The model predicts that the total electricity and heating bill for a home will triple by the time we go to net zero by 2050. And that's not counting general inflation, that's just fixed dollars.
Triple.
Triple, yeah, triple.
That is
It's gonna be hard on anyone making under $100,000 a year, yes, which is most of the population. So
Stephen, unlike Paul and unlike Martin, you're not a scientist and you're not engineer. You're in real estate.
That's correct. In fact, I've been in real estate for 45 years.
Where do you tie into the two pathway study?
We basically currently have a system that works well for heating our buildings.
Right.
Natural gas is efficient, it's reasonably affordable. The distribution network is already in place. And so as an incumbent, it's actually pretty effective. And getting people to say, why would I switch, is obviously a big challenge. The good news is that many of the owners of major projects across Canada and around the world are now larger institutional investors. They're also very concerned about what the environmental impacts are, and they're looking to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Natural gas is one of the biggest emitters here in Ontario. I think 25% roughly of GHG emissions are due to building heating. And when you get down to the city level, it's even more impactful. Here in Toronto, almost 50% of the emissions are due to building heating. So if you're a responsible investor and are trying to solve the problem of emissions, dealing with building heating is an important priority for you. So for district energy, I think the main challenge is how do we get those hot and cold water pipes from the sources of heat into the buildings. Yeah. But if you think about it, that's not much different than many of the other networks that service buildings today, whether it's roads or telecommunications or water, power, sewage. Yeah. So it's just another network that we have to really bite the bullet and invest in to actually provide the service. Think about it, if you diversify the different sources, you have a better chance of A, having more reliability, and B, not flaming out in any one, like investing in a stock. You only invest in one single stock, you may be a huge winner, but you're much better if you want to maintain your wealth to invest in a diversified portfolio.
Yeah. It's really important then that we encourage the government to provide a broader integrated analysis of our energy needs, not just the electricity and natural gas, but also thermal demand for heat. And hopefully we can optimize those three energy sources to be specific to our needs and appropriate to the geography where we live, and keep our average energy costs down so we can all afford to enjoy a vacation once in a while.
Should municipalities in Ontario be required to engage in heating planning? Only Ontarians can answer that, but how they will answer that question will likely make a big impact on their wallets.